about building for the next billion. Now, before getting into it, there's something that I think about a lot, and some of you probably think about the same thing, and that is, where would the next billion idea come from? So I'm going to ask you guys in the room, is there anyone that feels they have an idea or a product that has the potential to be worth $1 billion in the near future or in some length of time? Can I see a show of hands if you feel that way? Wow, okay. That's what I was expecting, and that's very inspiring because I know that, and we all know that there's a lot of talent that exists in Nigeria and on a broader scale in Africa. I firmly believe in the talent that exists here, and I know that amazing things are possible. Now, to create a $1 billion product, you need to solve a $1 billion problem. I think we all agree that there isn't a shortage of problems to solve in Nigeria. Don't you think so? I was listening to some of the sessions that took place earlier, and there was a lot of talk about, the challenges that we have in the country across multiple sectors on many levels. And so there's no shortage of problems to solve. And I believe that right here in this room, we have among the top talent that exists, right, in this environment. And so if there's going to be a next big thing, I think there's a really good chance that that would come from one of the people in this room. Yes, you can clap. And I firmly believe that. So in March, for International Women's Day, I wrote an article titled, "The Next Bill Gates is Female and African." Yes, absolutely. And it got a lot of positive feedback just for the title alone. Some people didn't read the article, but just seeing the title, people felt inspired and they felt it was a good call, and actually it was quite possible. Now, you can drop the word female, and the sentiment would still apply. And that is that the next Bill Gates is African. And why not? So what would it take? When we talk about building for the next billion users, this is based on the premise that currently there are over 7 billion people on the planet, and only about 3 billion are currently connected. And so there's an opportunity to bring the next 4 billion users online. What's interesting is that these 4 billion users, the bulk of them will come from emerging markets like Africa, and more specifically, sub-Saharan Africa. So we represent the region where a lot of the new entrants coming online and the future, the direction of the future of technology can really be influenced. And the invitation is that as the next billion users coming online, we should not just be consumers, but also active players and change agents. Someone mentioned that technology is a moving train. We know that with technology, a lot of things are possible. It can really create differentiation in every sector. And we have the power of technology and information at our fingertips. So there is no limit to what we can actually achieve. So Google has been investing a lot. We have a whole function internally that is focused on the next billion users, thinking about what would it take to build solutions that are relevant for the next billion users. Now, still on Africa, so sub-Saharan Africa represents a massive opportunity. We have 1.1 billion people on the continent, in the region, and just taking one country from the south, one from the west and the east, so Nigeria, Kenya, and South Africa, we're looking at almost 300 people. Now, Nigeria, as you know, is 180 million, so we're a good representation there. We've seen increase in number of mobile internet users. There's a wave, an increasing wave of Nigerians and Africans coming online and spending more time online doing great things. It's projected that by 2020, we'll have over 500 million mobile internet users across Africa. And also, we've seen a rise in the adoption of smartphones. As prices move downwards, we're seeing more people adopting smartphones. So there is a positive trend on all levels and a lot of opportunity. How do we tap into this opportunity? To be able to realize the opportunity that exists requires thinking differently in 3 ways. First is to spot the opportunity and choose to be bothered. We know that there are many areas where things can be better, can be further developed around us. We just have to look around us. There have been many conversations on this stage around the things that are broken. Now, each and every one of us has a choice to make. You can be a part of the problem, or you can be a part of the solution. We can be resigned, or we can choose to challenge the status quo. There's a saying that good enough is the enemy of great. I would assert that in our environment, survival is the enemy of great. But on the flip side of all the challenges is opportunity. We can choose to see the opportunity and be inspired. This is a video that really shows applying a machine learning platform, TensorFlow, which some people are familiar with, to solving problems with cassava plants. We talk about diversifying the economy in Nigeria and growing the agricultural sector. Now, cassava is a staple in this environment. Imagine if we can increase yield and maximize returns. Garri can actually be a great export from Nigeria, given how rugged the cassava plant is and how skilled we are in terms of cassava production. So this video really shows how machine learning has been applied to diagnose and eradicate diseases within cassava plants. So can you play the video, please?
Cassava is a really important crop. It provides for over 500 million Africans every day.
When all other crops fail, farmers know that they could rely on their cassava plants to provide them food.
There are several diseases that affect cassava, and these diseases make the roots unedible. It is very crucial to actually control and manage these diseases.
So we're trying to use machine learning to respond to those diseases.
And TensorFlow is the best foundation for our solutions. The app that we've designed can diagnose multiple diseases. It's called Nuru, Swahili for light, the light that farmers can use to see their problems and find solutions. You wave your phone over a specific leaf, look at it, and if it has a symptom, a box will pop up saying you have this problem. When you get a diagnosis, we have an option for you to get advice and learn about the best management practices.
The object detection that we use through TensorFlow relies upon our team annotating images.
We've collected over 5,000 high-quality images of different cassava diseases for this project. We use a single-shot detector model on a mobile net architecture. It's able to make predictions in less than 1 second.
Instead of having to implement thousands of lines of code, TensorFlow provides a library of functions that allow us to build architectures in much less time.
We need something that can be deployed on a phone without any connection. TensorFlow is able to shrink these neural networks to be able to fit on your mobile device.
The human input is absolutely critical. We're really building something that augments your experience and makes you better at your job.
So with AI tools and machine learning, you can improve the yields, you can protect your crops, and you can have a much more reliable source of food.
AI offers the prospect to fundamentally transform the life of hundreds of millions of farms around the world.
You can see a product that can actually make someone's life better. This is kind of revolutionary.
So that's one example. There are many examples of technology being applied to solve everyday problems in a very big way. So in terms of thinking differently, we've talked about being inspired. The next thing I would say is to think big. At Google, we talk about Moonshot Thinking, which is take your idea and 10x it, multiply it by 10. Now, this really changes the way you frame the problem and how you look at things. So if we just look at some examples, with Microsoft, the mission was a PC on every desk. That's quite a bold and a big vision, right? But it was, in many ways, it was realized. Google, from the start, was to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. Now, just think about that for a second. The research project started at Stanford University. The mission at the time could have been organize Stanford University information and make it universally accessible. That would have been a big accomplishment on its own. Or organize American information. But the mission was to organize the world's information. And that's being realized today. From maps information, to business information, to creative information, and so on and so forth. And if you set your sights really high, the chances are, even if you miss, you'll achieve something great. And so the invitation is to dare to dream big. Because with technology, we don't really have to worry about borders anymore. It is easy. If you create a solid foundation, it's easy to scale fast. Now, this is not to say that we just go from zero to hero overnight. That's not what the invitation is. Obviously, a lot of work needs to be done to make sure that value is being created, that there's operational excellence, that there's a very viable product, and then, but we can set the sights really high in terms of what's possible if we remove the barriers around how far we can go. Because with technology, a lot of things become possible. And then, of course, the final thing would be to take action. Because a great and a bold mission without a great plan of execution behind it is like wishful thinking, right? So the next thing is to get into action. And thinking about getting into action, I mentioned that we've done a lot of research, trying to think about what's unique about the next billion users and how can we tailor our products and services to really serve and create locally relevant solutions for this market. So I'm going to share some guidelines for building for the next generation of internet users. One is to design from the ground up. It's important to create real solutions to local problems. Larry Page talks about a utility test, which is if your product is as useful as a toothbrush, then you know you're onto a winner. It's very important we understand the realities within the market, to speak the local language, to look where the real opportunities exist, and then create from there. I'll give an example of WhatsApp. We know that WhatsApp was acquired in 2015 for $19 billion. Now, when WhatsApp started, it started as a status app on your phone. So just a way of telling people what your status was. Either I am available, or I'm in a meeting, or something like that, right? And these were very static updates. There was no way to dynamically update people. I just set my status, and someone would have to check to see what my status is. Now, one of the founders of WhatsApp, actually the main founder from the beginning, Jan Koen, he mentioned that before launching this app, he spoke to his friends, and everybody thought, it's a great idea, you must launch it, it's fantastic. And so he launched the app. But the results were very disappointing. First of all, there were some bugs, which they fixed. But as a status app, it looked very different from what it is now, and I'll come to that. But as a status app, it was like a good idea, but they weren't really solving any problem. He said, with hindsight, that even though it was, for a technology enthusiast, it was a great idea, he realized that they weren't adding any value, really. They weren't really solving any problem. And so the downloads and the uptake was really disappointing. I'll come back later to the story of WhatsApp. So the second thing is to design for the environment, to adapt to the realities of the environment. We know that one of the realities we have is poor and limited infrastructure, unreliable bandwidth, high cost of. So a lot of people are very data sensitive, low battery life on your phones, low spec phones, and so on and so forth. And so when we're designing solutions for this market, we have to think, for example, about things like making sure your app is light. You don't want a situation where I download your app and then it consumes all the memory on my phone and I can't do anything else. To make sure that the apps are rugged. So if I'm using this app and connection drops or power drops, it doesn't break. Once power is restored, the connection is restored, I can pick up from where I left off. Those kinds of sensitivities. That's very important in building for the market. The third is really designing for mobile. So Africa is a mobile first, and in some cases, mobile only region. There are many people that have their first and only internet experience via mobile. And so if you're looking to reach the masses, to build for the masses, the solution has to work on mobile. And also, it has to be easy to access. Keeping it simple, because the bulk of users in our markets may not necessarily be technology savvy, right? And so it's important for the solution to be simple. And particularly when you're talking about mobile, you've got limited space to work with. You know, it's really important to have simplicity and ease of use. Now, we published some principles for mobile design, which has been shared with some of you. You can go on Google search and just search for Google's 25 principles for mobile design. They cover everything from navigation to layout to user interface and so on and so forth. But it's very important that we really get it right around the user experience because it makes a lot of difference. And then the fifth that I'll share in the interest of time is that it's very important to think about incorporating feedback and iterating as you go along. Not many solutions start off getting it right first time. Usually, you have to iterate through a few cycles for you to actually nail exactly what users want and to get the product to the level that you want it to be. For example, Android. When we first released Android, there were some bugs, and it was very different from the Android that you have today. But we took feedback from users. We've been iterating and improving on the product. And that's why what you have today is of the quality that it is. Coming back to the story of WhatsApp. So I mentioned that it started as a status app, and the results were disappointing. And then a few months later, it was released on iPhone. So a few months later, Apple released push notifications. And so it was possible for you to change your status and then broadcast that to everyone on your contact list. And what the founder found was that people started using it in a different way. So when you change your status, rather than saying things like, I'm in a meeting or I'm not available, people started being very creative. So someone may say something like, I just arrived at the airport in Johannesburg. You know, or this is what I'm experiencing right here. So in many ways, people were using it as a messaging app. And so they collected all that feedback and understood that there was an opportunity to combine the best of SMS technology with the best of messaging technology to create a successful messaging app. So of course, one of the benefits of SMS is that you don't have to create body lists, you don't have to create usernames, you can just send messages to people on your contact list easily. And so that was something that they took on board. But also, with SMSs, there are lots of limitations. You can't send rich text, you can't send images, etc. So that was an improvement over SMS. And then, of course, with messaging, given that it was built to just integrate with contacts on your phone, you didn't have the challenge of trying to remember usernames, add body lists, and all of that stuff. So they were onto a winner at that point. But it took some iterations to get there. We know that there have been some setbacks in this environment. Some of you may have tried your hands on products that failed, or even businesses, maybe startups, that didn't really progress as you wanted. The invitation is not to be discouraged, to understand that it's all part of the process. We just need to learn from the mistakes, right? When we look at other emerging markets like China, and we look at some of the global success stories like Tencent, Alibaba, WeChat, they didn't start overnight. They have also gone through a number of cycles and iterations to get to where they are today. And so that's an essential part of the process. We need to build feedback into our process and learn from mistakes and move on. So Google has currently, we have 7 products that have over 1 billion users each. For some of them, it's multiples of that. So Android over 2 billion, YouTube over 4 billion, etc., right? But we understand that the next billion users to use these products are going to come from a different part of the world than the initial billions of users. And so internally, I mentioned that we have a team that has really been thinking through how do we innovate specifically for emerging markets for the next billion users. And so thinking about guidelines that I mentioned earlier, we've adapted some of our core products. So for example, we've created offline versions of some products like Maps Offline and YouTube Offline that have been launched in Nigeria. And also lighter apps like the YouTube Go app and Google Go app that are lighter and faster to use on your phone and that work really well on low-spec phones. But in addition to these, we've actually created some products that are emerging markets first products that were built specifically for these markets, like Files Go, helping you to share files even without an internet connection, and Datally, helping you to control, save, and manage your data. These are products that were built first for this market. And so this is something that we're doing on an ongoing basis. So putting it all together, what's important is to create value, so to ensure that we're inspired by the opportunities and the challenges around us, and create things that solve real problems, adapt to the local environment and create solutions that are locally relevant, and also to 10x your idea, to think global but act local. I would be really, really delighted to see breaking news like this in the near future. Wouldn't you? And I really believe it's possible. I don't just say this. I really believe it's possible because I'm a firm believer in the talent that exists in this environment. You're all very talented people. We know Nigerians are aggressive. You know, we make things happen in spite of all the challenges around us. And so I know that this is possible and really looking forward to this happening soon. And so as I mentioned earlier, it's very important that as we approach the next phase of technology evolution, that we're not just consumers, but we're actually active players and change agents that are influencing and shaping the direction of technology. The theme of this conference is "The future is now." Someone mentioned earlier that technology is a moving train. I firmly agree. I love the theme. And I think now is the time for us to just really put our mark and show that these numbers, the 180 billion within Nigeria, the 290 billion within our 3 sub-Saharan African markets, and the 1.1 billion across sub-Saharan Africa, those numbers can count for something globally. Thank you.